We were lucky enough to go on a Mediterranean cruise that included Istanbul, called Constantinople in the ancient and medieval world. We sailed on the Sea of Marmara and turned into the Bosphorus. Asia was on the right, Europe on the left. As we made the turn, there was the Blue Mosque, Hagia Sophia, and the Topkapi Palace. The ship turned into the Golden Horn and docked, essentially opposite the new mosque. We were amazed. Imagine how a medieval merchant would have felt 1,000 years ago, even before the Ottoman additions. The Emperor Diocletian divvied up the Roman Empire with junior colleagues in the 3rd century, then retired, an unusual occurrence. Constantine reconquered the entire empire in the 4th century and then converted to Christianity. Constantine ruled the empire from Byzantium, which became Constantinople. After Rome fell in the 5th century, the Byzantine Empire survived another 1,000 years. Constantinople was the largest and wealthiest city in Europe until the 13th century. It had a population of about 500,000 in the 6th century. Justinian was Eastern Roman Emperor for almost 40 years until 565. He conquered much of the former empire, including Rome, marking the greatest extent of the Eastern Empire, with a population estimated at 26 million. Byzantine culture flourished, including the building of Santa Sophia. The empire survived the Justinian plague, which struck in the 540s. Muslim caliphates attacked during the 7th century, conquering much of the empire, including rich provinces like Egypt and Syria. Constantinople was sacked during the 4th Crusade, with much of the booty hauled back to Venice. The empire never fully recovered and was finally conquered by the Ottoman Turks in 1453. The empire was centered further south than Europe, desirable for farming around rivers and other water sources. Agriculture close to the sea grew cereal crops, vineyards, and olives. Other areas focused on livestock. European feudalism did not develop. Instead, there were mainly large estates with tenants and villages with small landholders. Unfortunately, slavery also continued in some areas. Monasteries existed, but with less influence. Conquest by Muslims and Crusaders disrupted political and economic conditions, including both farming and trade. When Rome fell, Eurasian-wide trade collapsed. Merchants found themselves fleeing for their lives like all the others who could. They had the advantage of mobility. There were continuing threats from Germans, Huns, and later Muslims and Mongols, but life settled down for most people most of the time, and both wealth and trade grew. Innovation happened, and both technology and food choices improved, particularly in urban areas. Given the strategic position between Europe and Asia on the Mediterranean and Black Seas, Constantinople was an obvious trading location. Plus, trade was a source of wealth for the city and the emperor. Being in the perfect spot for merchants to meet, it was a matter of accommodating traders from east and west, including some level of customs duties and other fees to fund the empire. The Silk Road and Indian Ocean continued bringing exotic eastern goods like silk, pepper, and other spices. These might show up by camel or ship. Ditto from North Africa and Europe. Invasions caused disruptions, but trade continued at some level. Local markets were similar to those of other cities and towns around Europe. Market squares were established. Permanent shops lined the streets of small merchants selling their stock. Festivals and fairs were established, particularly on saints' days, accompanied by sales taxes. Given the centrality and importance of trade, coinage was a key element. Copper, silver, and gold coins were minted here, with images mainly of the emperor, like the Justinian gold solitas, and religious symbols. The coins paid the armies, were needed to pay taxes, and necessary for trade. The Italian city-states became increasingly important as merchants, with the bottoms-up approach developing into merchant capitalism that proved so effective for expanding trade efficiently and profitably to the Byzantine Empire and beyond. Ship improvements, banking, insurance, double-entry bookkeeping, and precursors to corporations started here. Of course, ruthlessness was part of the process. Why? Wealth and power. They accommodated producers and consumers across Eurasia. Farm products, textiles, and luxury goods shipped both east and west were part of the merchant process. Byzantium was founded as a Greek colony, so Byzantine food initially resembled Hellenized Greco-Roman food, featuring a strange fish sauce called gyros, typical cereals, meats, and fish, plus wine. For rich folk, that included sugar and spices from the east. The poor ate traditional Greek local foods. Cooks of the elites could experiment with products and styles from across the empire, meaning there were no geographic limits. Like Parisians, Byzantines drank wine, likely in greater variety because of easier availability. Note the table fork may have been a Byzantine invention. Of course, cuisine varied by class, location, and time period. Elites had similar tastes to European nobles, with lots of fresh meats and white bread, but using food associated with warmer climates like olive oil. Cheeses like feta could come from water buffalo. They preferred to drink milk heated. Products from Asia were more convenient, including sugar and multiple spices, with the Roman preference for pepper. Eggs and cheeses were common for all, and even the emperors ate salads. All ate fish on fast days, more likely fresh for elites and dried or salted for peasants. Honey was the common sweetener, and baklava a common dessert. In season, fruits and vegetables were eaten by all. Poor people were like the peasants of London and Paris, eating cheaper and less processed cereals for bread and porridge. The most common meat was pork, although experts disagree on how much meat was in a peasant's diet. Most meats would have been preserved by salting or smoking. It was all over in 1453. The Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II conquered Constantinople. It became the capital of the Ottoman Empire for over 500 years. That's the segue into our next video on the rise of Muhammad and the Muslim world, on food history and mystery.